The Invaders have always been Marvel's World War II team par excellence, but what happens when one of their members turns to the dark side? Well, let's all hop into the pages of Invaders issue number 1 from Chip Zdarsky and find out. Alrighty then, so as we join the story, we're treated to a flashback of the Great War. Namor the Submariner is fighting alongside the Allies, and he's pushing himself pretty hard. He's been out of water for way too long, which means he's being weakened. However, he refuses assistance and demands to push forward to save the life of a man named Tommy, a character who we discover was actually quite near and dear to the once and future King of Atlantis. Why, they basically implied this issue that Tommy was Namor's Bucky. In his dehydrated state though, Namor shows up too late and Tommy gets killed by Axis forces. Now flash forward to the present and a lot of things has changed for Namor. He's currently broken bad and managing to bedevil both the Avengers and the Winter Guard. He plans for a full-scale war with the surface world, and he is joined by Makan, his advisor, in attempting to recruit new allies for this fight. Do keep this new advisor in mind, he will be important later. From there we transition on over to Avengers Mountain, where Captain America is running a training simulation while talking to his other World War II buddy Jim Hammond, aka the original robotic Human Torch. Hammond, as we discover, is actually in the process of writing a tell-all book about his adventures with the Invaders, and he's hitting up Captain America for some quotes. How does a synthetic life form like Jim not have perfect recollection? Well, that's the interesting quirk in his robotics. He was actually designed to have memories that fade over time. Ain't that a kick in the pants? What is perhaps most interesting about this book is how Jim seeks to handle writing about Namor. Mainly, Jim is not completely convinced that he's a bad guy right now, even though he's been duking it out with the Avengers. Torch says that he and Steve had a real long time to deal with all of their battle scars, get their PTSD sorted out, and, kind of work through their own personal demons left over from the war. Namor was never a touchy-feely guy, and Torch feels that he might still be dealing with all of these issues all this time later. Throw in being a former amnesia sufferer, like all comic book characters, and maybe the last thing he needs to heal is to get beaten on by the Fantastic Four and the Avengers anymore. This discussion ends up triggering a not-so-happy memory in Steve's mind to Namor's behavior following Tommy's death. Basically, Namor took to a saloon to drink and womanize and talk about how he didn't care about humanity, how they were all just bags filled with water. Man, I could kill any of you right now. I'm not sad, I'm not upset, you're upset. Steve wasn't there emotionally for his teammate back then when he needed him most, and it looks like they're still dealing with the fallout from this all these years later. Now, what exactly is Namor after? It seems that he wants to recruit an elite group of Atlantean fighters called the Sea Blades. They had once served loyally Namor's father, but rejected Namor's rule himself due to his dual heritage, and because of that they took off to the darkest part of the oceans to pirate and raid and basically just continue living life as badasses. Needless to say, Namor has his work cut out for him when it comes to actually getting these guys on his side. Luckily, he's able to drown them in air by forcing the water to move by sheer force of will, a power no one really seemed to know Namor had until just this moment. Oh man, Namor's such a dick, not even the ocean wants to be around him. Now back over with Jim Hammond, he's putting the final touches on his book. He interviews a man who was actually there the day Tommy died, and it seems this dude too also has a pretty high opinion of Namor, even naming his poor daughter after the man. It's when Torch goes through an old photo album though he sees something kind of interesting. It's Namor from not all that long ago, this man, his daughter, but also Charles frickin' Xavier, Professor X. That picture also seemed to be taken around the time when Namor was supposed to have had his famous bout of amnesia, so this whole thing just got way more complicated. Oh, but if that twist blew your mind, you ain't seen nothing yet. You see, we're treated to one final flashback where Namor actually recovers Tommy's body. We read his last name, and we discover that it's eerily close to Makan, his advisor, and that's because, well, Namor the King of Atlantis has become the Mad King of Atlantis. His advisor was never there. Namor has quite literally been talking to himself this whole time, which has his new elite Atlantean raiders on edge as to what he might do next as the comic ends. And so that was Invaders issue number 1, everybody, and even if I wasn't carrying a torch for this team, team, I would say this book was firing on absolutely all cylinders. The Invaders are a team that have always had a hard time fighting for relevance in a modern age of comics when they themselves are so intrinsically tied to World War II, but here Zdarsky does something quite clever by making it a story about wartime trauma. Ghosts from the past, while also hinting at perhaps a much bigger, much more interesting conspiracy at play here involving Namor. The artwork here too from Butch and Carlos is also on point and really does a good job giving this book its own unique feel and identity, completely separate from a book like Avengers where a lot of the same characters have been appearing. I'm just all about it and could not recommend it higher. I give it a much deserved 9 out of 10 and I am so on board to see where this book is going to go from here.
Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again. I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and if you did, why not take a closer look at some of these other videos I have available from the channel. Then you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Cape Joel so you're always up to speed on what I'm doing next. And hey, if you're in a supportive mood, why not check out my Patreon page. Patrons get exclusive access to videos and content before anyone else, and you can do so for as little as $1 a month. I would really appreciate it, and with that, I will be sure to be back again next time with even more great comic content that smacks of greatness. Bye-bye, everyone.